Okay, so let's make sure that our live stream is working. Make sure we got everything going today. Excuse me. All right. So I hope that you're doing well. Anyone who's watching. Got another figure to open up for you today. Let me just make sure the camera's working. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so here we are with another G.I. Joe classified unboxing. Blue White Mario is here, and Sean Franklin is here. So hello to you both. Hope you're both doing well. We got another G.I. Joe classified figure. It is Snake Eyes. This is based on the 1990s Snake Eyes figure, as if you couldn't tell. He's a little less brightly colored than that one, but still kind of brightly colored for his Snake Eyes. Here's our portrait over here. Snake Eyes with his sword and his submachine gun. It's not an Uzi. That's an H&K, I believe. I'm not like a super expert on guns. Absolute Cinema, yes indeed. So I'm not an expert on guns, but I'm pretty sure that's an H&K. And you can see on the packaging here, it's got some red detailing on it. The sword has some red detailing on it. Now, on the original figure that came out in the 1990s, all that stuff was just molded in bright fluorescent red plastic, like very bright red, obnoxiously bright red plastic. Bobby Wald says, I have him posed with Desert Scorpion using Siffy's blast. Looks just like Sub-Zero versus Scorpion. Yeah, I'll bet. I don't have sci-fi yet. I need to get sci-fi. But yeah. So the weapons on the original figure were not only red, but they were like the most obnoxious fluorescent red, like almost orange kind of color. And the figure itself wasn't bad, but like, you know, maybe it could have been darker colors considering how it's Snake Eyes. I didn't mind it like having blue on it or gray on it, for example, but maybe a darker blue and a darker gray would have been better. But that red, it was just so out there. So I think that was probably the thing that really turned a lot of people off of the original figure. I actually really liked the sculpt on that figure, and in fact, I had one years later that I just painted the entire thing with matte black paint, and then it looked awesome. But yeah, let's go ahead and open them up. This is figure number 165 in the G.I. Joe Classified Collection. There's your little esoteric emblems. I don't know what they mean. We'll go ahead and have one more look at that portrait of them on the side. I think they did a good job with that. So the little paper fell out. And for some reason that came out. I didn't mean to pull that out, but whatever. We'll put it back in there. But yeah, I thought the figure itself was pretty good. And it came out around the time that Ninja Force was coming out, the Ninja Force subline. So I kind of associate this Snake Eyes with this Storm Shadow, which, yeah, I do have the Arctic Storm. They call him the Arctic Storm Shadow. I do actually have this figure. I pre-ordered it on Amazon way back in the day and was lucky enough to get him. So not a lot of people have this one. But Storm Shadow is my favorite G.I. Joe character. So I had to make sure that I got like the G.I. Joe Classified Storm Shadow figure. This was the only one that they had. Sean Franklin asked, do you have Predator and Alien action figures? Yes to both. And in fact, I think that the Christmas tree is set up at my house now. So I can take one of my Predator action figures and put them up in the Christmas tree, as is my tradition. But yeah, this is a figure that's hard to come by, and it's expensive if you can find them now. But thankfully, I was able to get them like when it was a brand new figure. So lucky me. So I'll have the Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow that go together, as far as I'm concerned. Like those are the ones that, and they did have a Ninja Force Snake Eyes later on, but it came out in like the second wave. So I had this one with that Storm Shadow for a bit longer. So let's go ahead and cut the tape and get this submachine gun out of here. Not an Uzi this time. It's an H&K. But I made my own custom of this version of Snake Eyes because I figured they probably wouldn't make him, and I was mistaken. I should have realized that they're going to make every version of Snake Eyes that they can. But yeah, so mine turned out pretty well. I just kind of repainted the movie, the Snake Eyes Origins that I got cheap at Ollie's, and 3D printed him a new head, which was I think it was Donovan Art Collectibles had made the Resolute Snake Eyes head. So I 3D printed that one in silver plastic, and then just painted the top of the mask and the goggles. And I painted the goggles on mine with like clear. I molded it in silver. I 3D printed it in silver, and then I did the goggles with clear red plastic. So he has metallic red goggles that look really cool. So I haven't really been talking about these accessories too much while I've been pulling them out. So let's go ahead and do that. So we got a grappling hook, and the grappling hook is red. Unlike the original 90s Snake Eyes, the grappling hook is not obnoxiously fluorescent red. It's actually kind of a deep crimson, almost like a blood red. And it looks like it's kind of translucent, which I think is probably on accident. He does not have a giant blue backpack to launch his grappling hook, but he does have the grappling hook, so that's a nice little inclusion. Bobby Wald asks, I'm wondering if they're going to do a Boy George version of Snake Eyes from the Pyramid of Darkness episodes. I'm sure some people would really enjoy that. That would be an easy pass for me, but I'm sure some people would really enjoy that. And then he's got two swords, which the swords do have some red detailing on them, I guess as an homage to that original figure. But it's kind of the opposite of how I would have done it. I would have had like the edge of the blade be silver and the rest of the sword be red. Because like that's the part where it sharpens. That's the part where the paint would come off, right? When you sharpen your sword, you would scrape the paint off of there. So what's even the point of painting it? Unless that's the blood of his enemies. So we can pretend it's the blood of his enemies, and then it makes a lot more sense. And then the last accessory that I haven't gone over is he's got a little sheath backpack, and we're very familiar with this by this point, aren't we? We've seen this with lots of figures. It originally came with the Snake Eyes Origin movie version of Storm Shadow, but it's a nice little backpack, and the swords fit in it pretty well. So go ahead and have a look at it with the swords in there. So I'm not going to complain when I see this backpack. I know it seems like the sort of thing like a lot of people might say, oh, it's overused at this point. But no, I think it gets probably about the right amount of use. If you're going to have a character with swords and you need a place to put it, why not just, use we already have these that are perfectly good. Might as well just use them again. And then I don't think I mentioned it, but of course this is the same. We've had this weapon a few times before, and the silencer does come off of it. And this does look a lot like the. I don't think that one was actually based on any real world weapon, but it looks about close enough to this that I don't mind that they used this as their version of the 90s Snake Eyes gun. All right, so now that we've been all over those accessories, let's go ahead and get Snake Eyes himself out of the package. And this was quite the departure from how we were used to seeing Snake Eyes when we first saw this figure in the 90s. Because remember, the original Snake Eyes figure was all in black. And that wasn't the original design for that figure. Originally, they were going to have some other colors on him. But they decided it would be a good idea to save a little bit of money and pass some of their painting budget on to other figures in the line if they made one figure all black. And who better to do that with than the guy who is completely covered up and we can't see any of his skin anyway. We might as well make his whole uniform black. And then we can afford to put some really cool camo colors on Stalker. So there's a There's a holster here for what looks like a holster for a gun, but I don't know. He doesn't have a pistol. Is this supposed to fit in there? It kind of opens up here. That's interesting. So I guess you're supposed to use this as a holster for the submachine gun. It does fit in there. So, okay. So we do have some weapon storage for the submachine gun. So if we want to have him dual wielding with the katanas, we can totally do that. So that should be fun. That'll be something we do a little bit later. Well, I'm glad they included this as an homage to the original, and it's a neat little accessory. I'm not going to be doing anything with this. I refuse. I absolutely refuse to unwind the cord because I don't want to have a bunch of untangled cords in my parts bin. So I'm not gonna do that. One difference that I notice right off the bat, as far as like an obvious difference, is that the original 90s Snake Eyes had like kind of cloth. I mean, you can see them at the back. They've got them at the back, like kind of cloth blue pieces here, where this one has like actual shin armor that's kind of a glossy black. You can see like his pants are a little bit more of a matte black. They're a little shiny, but trust me, they're more matte than the shin armor, which is just very shiny. He's got the kind of ninja toes on his boots like Tim Drake Robin has. So and he's got like very tight black pants, very tight blue shirt, like a superhero type shirt. This would not surprise me if I was to take off the vest. I would not be surprised if underneath this is just Zartan's bare chest again. And this is probably Zartan's arms, if maybe a little retooled. So he's got like the forearm guards also very similar, not identical, but very similar to what the original 90s Snake Eyes had. And you can see it's got little characters on it. I'm not sure what it says. And I'm not like an expert at Asian languages, but to me this almost looks more like Chinese writing than Japanese writing, which Japanese writing would probably be more appropriate since Snake Eyes was trained as a ninja in Japan. But that's just my opinion. And there is an extra articulation here where that rotates around. So we'll talk more about that when we talk about the articulation in a minute. So other additions to this, I already mentioned this holster, but the original Snake Eyes just pretty much had plain thighs that again looked like he was just wearing tights. But this one has this holster added to it, and also this little multi-scabbard of throwing knives. So that's pretty cool. Bobby Wald says there's a Baron Zemo with the optional head sculpt without his mask. I want to use that for Snake Eyes being unmasked. I think that would probably work out really well. I think that would probably be a good choice. Now, me personally, I had some that I 3D printed a while back, and I think I did a short of it on this very channel, so you can find them. The ones that I 3D printed were Donman Art Collectibles had made an unmasked Snake Eyes set that had, the boonie hat, and they had one with the scars as they were depicted in the comic book when they finally showed Snake Eyes unmasked, and then another one after he'd gotten the plastic surgeon, the plastic surgery to fix his face finally. And to me, that figure's head looked kind of like Buster Crabbe. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, I made all of those, and but to me, when we finally saw Snake Eyes' face in the comics, I was like, that's it. I wasn't that impressed by it. I thought he could have been a lot uglier, actually. So I found Donman Art Collectibles also had like a zombie head that I printed out and made that. That's my version of what Snake Eyes looks like without the mask, and that's a bit more gruesome. But you can find the short on my channel, I'm sure. But yeah, that's what I wound up doing. So, and I've probably got that around somewhere, but I'm not sure where it is. I might just make another one because, like I said, 3D printed it. It's not that big a deal. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about this guy's articulation. Oh, and Head Over Diecast is here. He says, hello, everyone. Hello to you. Sorry, I'm a little delayed on that. I got distracted. I was talking about Snake Eyes and his ugly, burned up face. Now, of course, by this point in the comic book, he would have already had the plastic surgery, and he wasn't ugly anymore. I have a theory. After Snake Eyes got the plastic surgery, he still had a couple of scars on his face. He still had like one like right here, for example, and one kind of on his lip. And you remember that Snake Eyes, his face was injured in Vietnam. Not to the point where he was disfigured or anything, but we know that he had some scars on his face after his time in Vietnam. And I think what happened was when Dr. Hunter Kinder did the plastic surgery on Snake Eyes and reconstructed his face. Snake Eyes wanted to leave the scars that he had from Vietnam because he wanted the face that Scarlet first saw. When she first saw his face, he wanted that face. So he still wanted to have the scars that he had from Vietnam. So that's my theory as to why he still had some scars on his face after he got his facial reconstructive surgery. Head Over Diecast says, no problem, my friend. Just glad to be here to learn and listen. Well, I'm glad to have you. All right. So, and then I think this belt, this is a newer piece. Again, the Snake Eyes figure in the 90s, the lower half of him was very plain. He didn't have any holsters, any belts, anything. He just looked like he was kind of wearing plain superhero tights with like the kind of fabric, I don't know what you would call those, these fabric cover pieces. Again, you can see them on the back here. They still have them on the back, but those originally went around the whole shin and calf and everything. So, and then the vest is pretty accurate with all the pouches and things that he had on the vest, and it was kind of like almost like a gray web gear over a black vest, and then you could see the blue undershirt under it. Now, they did do, it wasn't technically the 25th anniversary line anymore at that point, but they did do some 25th anniversary style figures that were based off of this version of Snake Eyes, that were the Dollar General Snake Eyes figures, and those reused a lot of parts from other figures. So, they just pretty much Frankensteined that figure together as best they could. And I think they did a good job considering what they had to work with. But they did one colored like this, and they did another one colored in like a green color scheme that I thought was really cool. So, if Hasbro wants to do another variant of Snake Eyes where they do a green version of this, I think that would be really cool. Hell, do this version of Snake Eyes in green, and then do this version of Storm Shadow, and then give people a chance to get this Storm Shadow sculpt again. Do this version of Storm Shadow colored up to look like Ginsu or whatever that character's name was that they did the second Dollar General Storm Shadow. Because the first Dollar General Storm Shadow was this one. Again, like I say, these two go together. I don't care if there was a Ninja Force Snake Eyes later on. This is the Snake Eyes that goes with this Storm Shadow, as far as I'm concerned. but that would give people another chance to at least get that sculpt, if not that paint job, since this is such a rare and sought after figure. And I'm going to show them off again. So I always had a soft spot for this design of Storm Shadow. I always liked the Ninja Force Storm Shadow design. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about his articulation. So Snake Eyes can look up about that far, look down about that far, tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side, which is good to have on a character that can't talk. You got to find other ways for him to express his thoughts and emotions, and doing that quizzical head turn like that is a good way to do that. Just ask Jason Voorhees. And then the head rotates all the way around. And of course, this being a G.I. Joe classified figure, that means that it also has like an extra point of articulation where it articulates where the head meets the torso, as well as where the head meets the neck, or where the neck meets the torso and where the torso meets the neck. And make sure you got his Adam's apple pointed around the right way when you're done playing around with that. And Snake Eyes can rotate his arms all around at the shoulders, of course. And he does have that kind of butterfly joint, but it's the armhole for this vest is a little snug. So I don't think it's going to quite move as well. It doesn't seem like it moves quite as well as some of the other ones, but it moves okay. Arms, of course, raise all the way up the sides. And then he's got a bicep swivel, so the bicep rotates all the way around. We got double jointed elbows. That's about the range of motion that you get at the elbows. And as I mentioned before, these arm guards are a separate piece. So those rotate all the way around where the arm guards actually meet the rest of the forearm. So you can pivot these arm guards around any which way you want to. So that's good. And then, of course, the wrists rotate all the way around. And the left wrist has a vertical hinge. So it moves up and down like so. And the right wrist has a horizontal hinge that moves back and forth like that. So, remember in the last review where I was talking about Major Blood, I was talking about how it seemed like that was the reverse of how that usually is, but he's got the same thing going on as Major Blood. So maybe I just don't know what the hell I'm talking about as far as that goes. He does have the kind of ab crunch thing going on that G.I. Joe figures have. It's underneath the vest, as you can see. So the vest is going to kind of hinder that a little bit. That's just to be expected. And then the waist rotates all the way around. And he's got that kind of wobble where he can move back and forth, frontwards and backwards, side to side. Again, kind of reminiscent of the original 80s G.I. Joe figures, but it's not an O-ring. It's a ball in a socket, but it still kind of moves the same way. He does have that drop down hip. Snake Eyes can kick up about that far so he can deliver a good ninja kick right to Cobra's face. And I didn't notice before, but the soles of his shoes are actually blue. How about that? Snake Eyes does have a thigh cut, so the thigh rotates all the way around. And he's got those kind of superhero tights, kind of like what I was talking about the original 90s Snake Eyes has. And oh, hey, look at there. He's still got the blue stripe. I didn't notice that either, but he's still got that blue stripe going down his leg. So he's still kind of got the superhero tights thing going on that 90s Snake Eyes had, but they made it a little more tactical by adding the belt and adding the holster and the knives there. So you got a little bit of extra detail that the original figure didn't have. But if you want them to look a little more like the original figure, you can go ahead and take those off. They should be fairly easily removable since they are separate pieces. Unfortunately, the shin guards do not seem to be removable. Those are molded straight onto the legs. So you're stuck with that inaccuracy if that's something that's bothering you. It doesn't bother me too much, but I do kind of wish that they'd made the shin guards blue instead of this glossy black, because I think that would have been more in line with the vintage look of the figure. And I don't know if mine is warped or anything, but it almost looks like this shin is in the wrong place. But the other shin looks fine, and they don't look like they're the same shin. So I don't know why I'm thinking that. It might just be my own little quirk, whatever. He's got double jointed knees. That's about the range of motion you get at the knees. So pretty decent range of motion you get at the knees. He does have a boot cut, so it rotates all around in the middle of the shin calf area. Foot points down about that far. Foot points up about that far. And then that rotates all the way around. So that is pretty much it for the articulation on our 90s Snake Eyes figure. So let's go ahead and put some of these accessories on him and see what he looks like with those. So we got the backpack here. And again, it's just this simple backpack with the two little short sword sheaths on them. And it can plug into his back like so. But it does seem like it sits a little high on the back that way. So that's normally the way I have this backpack facing, though. I like to have the swords where the right hand can get to them. And I like to have them where they're looped like that. But maybe I can try turning it around the other way. It just seems to me like it would go that way, But I think I can probably turn it around the other way. And let's see if that looks a little better. It's still, I think just the backpack hole itself is a little high on this figure. But if you want to try it that way, you can try it that way. It does seem like they go in there a little more snugly. while I'm doing that. Maybe it's just because I got the wrong sword in the wrong sheath. These swords like are weird because they kind of look identical. Like if you're not looking too closely at them, but they are different swords. Yeah, I think it works better the other way around. I think it's made so the swords go in there the other way around. Damn it, I dropped it. Butterfingers. So I dropped it and it went right down here. And I felt it land on my foot, but I don't know where it went. And I'm just wearing socks, so I can... Oh, where did you go? Man, I sure do hate dropping stuff. Dropping stuff is just the worst. There it is. Okay, I found it. I figured it couldn't have gone too far. Anyway. But yeah, like it was, like I said, these are the same swords that we had with the movie Storm Shadow, and the blades are about the same length. So you can see the blades are about the same length. I think that one might be slightly longer than the other, but like negligibly, like a hair. The hand guards are different, because you can see one of them has like little notches in it at the four corners there, you see, and the other one does not. It's just a round one. One of them, the hilt of the sword is just slightly longer, like a 1/16 of an inch longer. It's just barely longer. And the texture of the wrapping around the hilts is different. And it's one of those things like I don't know why they put so much effort into making two different swords that look pretty much the same. You know what I mean? Like to me, the difference in these swords, it exists. I can tell it's there, but it's kind of negligible, you know? Like why? Why did you go through all the effort to make two different swords that are basically the same sword? But I like to, when I put this guy together, I like to have the slightly longer handled sword at the top and the slightly shorter sword. I think that just aesthetically looks better. So there we go. And then we can take the submachine gun and put it in his hand. And like I said, we've seen this submachine gun with several figures before. The movie version of Baroness had this submachine gun, and Tomax and Zaymot had this submachine gun, and various other characters have had it. It's a really good weapon. I don't mind having it again. And you can see they put some red detail on Snake Eyes version to make it a little more special and something kind of unique for this 90s version of Snake Eyes. So what we like to do when we were kids was have him with the gun in one hand and the sword in the other. And the thumbnail is probably going to be him with the gun in one hand and the sword in the other. And then the other, there doesn't seem to be any place to store the grappling hook. So, you know, like I predicted, it's just going to wind up in my parts bin. So I'm definitely not unwrapping that cord, because I don't need all these loose cords in my parts bin. We're not having that. But since Snake Eyes does have a place to store his submachine gun when he's not using it, and honestly, I don't think this seems like a holster that's going to hold up to carrying this thing around during like rough play. Like if you're letting your kids play with this, or you know, if you're a kid watching this is not a show for kids, but you know, if you are a kid watching this and you actually play with these toys, if you're one of the kids that still plays with toys, it fits in there and it holds it if he's just going to stand on your shelf. But I would think if you're going to be running around in the backyard with this guy, eventually this thing's going to fall out. Now it does fit in there. I find a bit better if you make sure the scope is in that little notch, and then it seems like there's a little more sort of resistance in there. I believe that's the way that this rifle is made to fit in here. It does seem like it fits in there a little bit better that way. But I still wouldn't take a chance on leaving it in there if you're going to be running around in the backyard with it, because he'll drop that gun and you'll never see it again. It'll get chewed up by the lawnmower. I might not even trust my mom's shag carpeting. So Bobby Wald says Snake Eyes is doing it the hard way. He doesn't need two different lengths of swords. He just needs to learn to scream thunder to make it grow. Well, it's hard to do when your vocal cords are damaged. Now, in the comics nowadays, Snake Eyes is actually in a cloned body. His original body was destroyed, and the current Snake Eyes is in a cloned body, so he actually can speak. But he's a man of few words anyway, isn't he? So like we don't Snake Eyes. In the final issue of the Marvel series, which is a masterpiece, excellent writing. Snake Eyes writing a letter to this kid, Sean Collins, who wound up joining the G.I. Joe team himself anyway. But Snake Eyes is talking about the injuries that he suffered in that helicopter crash and that disastrous mission in the desert, and he tells Sean in the letter, "I never could carry a tune anyway," which I thought was a nice little, you got to have a sense of humor about these things, I guess. But yeah, and Snake Eyes talks in that letter about how people tend to be uncomfortable around him, which is why I think he cherishes the people that are comfortable around him. That's something I can kind of relate with. So, but yeah, like, Scarlet's plenty comfortable around him, and our buddy Storm Shadow, his brother from another mother, and of course Stalker. I think those are like his three best friends in the whole world, and they're like family to him. Luke Skywalker 1977 is here and says, "Love your videos, man. Great knowledge about some of the stuff that I didn't even know or forgot." Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So. And I like the screen name because I'm a big fan of Luke Skywalker. He was one of my childhood heroes. So, especially in 1977. But yeah. So technically Snake Eyes, I guess, could yell out thunder if he wanted to now. But the thing is, the swords aren't even that different. Like I said, like they could have just made these the same exact sword, and I don't think anybody would have noticed or cared. And I noticed that these are different, and I'm just like, why are they even different if they're going to be that similar? This is, like I said, we've seen these swords several times on several figures in the time since that Snake Eyes movie came out with that original Storm Shadow figure, and it's just baffled me every single time that we see these. And like I said, I like the swords. I think they're actually good swords, and I like the backpack. I like all that stuff. It was a confusing decision for me. That's all it is. But here he is dual wielding both the swords. And I should point out also that original 90s Snake Eyes figure, that one came with two swords that he could dual wield in addition to the submachine gun. But that figure did not have any place to store any of that equipment. Usually Snake Eyes at least has a sword sheath somewhere in those vintage figures, but it ended with that one. But like, yeah, like the original Snake Eyes didn't have a sword anyway, but the 85, the version 2 Snake Eyes, that one had a sword sheath on his backpack, and the 89 version 3 Snake Eyes had a sword sheath on his backpack. This guy all of a sudden just didn't need to have any kind of storage for his weapons anymore. I don't know. And Ninja Force Snake Eyes didn't have any storage for his weapons either, and he came with like a few swords as well. He didn't come with a gun though, because that was a Ninja Force Snake Eyes. But this was the last O-ring version of Snake Eyes that we got in that original line. Although we would get more come 2002 with the Joe versus Cobra line, and Spy Troops and Valor versus Venom. All of those would have O-ring versions of Snake Eyes. And then I don't think we got another new O-ring version of Snake Eyes anyway until until Super 7 came along and gave us this guy who does have storage for his sword in his backpack, but it doesn't work very well. You can see it already fell out again. So anyway, let me go ahead and put one of these swords back in his backpack. We'll go ahead and get this guy ready for his thumbnail. But I think I'm just about done with this video. I think that's everything I have to say about this figure. He's really cool, but I don't think he's going to be anybody's definitive version of Snake Eyes, if you know what I mean. I mean, like, we've already had, like, you know, the 85 Snake Eyes was basically represented by the first classified figure, and that's a great figure. I think everybody digs that one. And then they did the version of that came with Timber. And then if you're somebody who's more of a fan of the original, the Commando, the 1982 Snake Eyes, we've had a couple of different versions of that with the vintage card one, which I've never seen in person. I don't have one, never ran across it. And the one that came with Timber in the 2-pack. And then we even had like an animated version of that one that comes with the polar bear, which I did not buy because it's ridiculously expensive. At least it was when I saw it at GameStop. I might be able to get one cheaper later on, and then maybe I'll get one and open it up. But oh, Lone Dragon is here. He waves at us, so I wave back. Bobby Wald asks or says that Ninja Force Snake Eyes, where they limited his leg articulation, really bothered me. I like the look of the figure. I do too. And in fact, I made a custom of that figure. Again, that's another one I did as a short. You can find the short here on YouTube. That's another one that I made out of one of the many movie Snake Eyes figures that I got at Ollie's for cheap. So I actually already have a Ninja Force Snake Eyes, but I gave mine an Uzi, a bright blue Uzi, to look like the rest of his bright blue weapons. Head over to Diecast asked, did you ever see the TMNT Transformers figures? I saw the Turtle Van at Target a while back, I think. I didn't buy it, but I thought it was pretty cool. But I did see it. I liked that it had where you could swap out the bandanas on the robot so you could have them be whichever one of the boys you wanted it to be. Because that's cool. Because everybody's got like a different favorite Ninja Turtle, right? Like you know, every Ninja Turtle is somebody's favorite Ninja Turtle. And it would be a shame that, like, if, say, your favorite was Leonardo and it only came as Michelangelo. Or if you had to, like, hunt down whichever one you wanted. Like, and it's like you just really want Donatello, but every time you go to the store, it's stupid old Raphael. Now, me personally, Raphael's my favorite, so that would be the one I would want. But I think they made a smart decision in making it so you could swap out the bandanas. So that way, if you're only able to get one, whichever one is your favorite, that's the one you got. Because you can just put that orange or blue or red or purple bandana, whichever one you want, that's the one it is. Or if you're crazy enough that you want to have all four of them and hunt down all four of them, you can display them all with the different colored bandanas and have whichever one of the boys you want to have, like have all four of them together. Or if you're a real bad man, put the red bandanas on all of them because Mirage forever. We don't need no multicolored headbands. All our Ninja Turtles have red headbands because we're old school like that. Personally, I've mentioned before, I like the multicolored headbands. I think that was one of the improvements the cartoon made. I like that addition to their visual identity, as it were. But yeah, that's it for Snake Eyes. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure that you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this figure specifically and the character of Snake Eyes in general, and you know what your favorite version of Snake Eyes is. I think most people seem to lean towards the 1985 version, but I know the 1982 version has its fans. And personally, as far as the vintage figures go, my personal favorite vintage Snake Eyes figure, kind of a dark horse candidate here, is the 1989 Snake Eyes. That's the one I like the best. I kind of feel like they could have done a better job with that 85 Snake Eyes. As far as I know, that's the most iconic design, but the figure itself has some issues to it that I don't really. Honestly, I feel like Super 7 improved upon that, if we're being honest. But anyway, but I did have this Snake Eyes, and I've got a lot of fond memories of him. And he wasn't my favorite of the vintage line, but he was pretty cool, so I liked him pretty well. So anyway, next episode we got more G.I. Joe for you, because I got so much G.I. Joe coming up. And next episode is going to be the enemy leader, Cobra Commander, and it's Cobra Commander in his battle armor. So there's a lot to unpack with this guy. And you can see the box is kind of smashed in. I got him cheap on Amazon when I ordered him a while back. So, but that's it for Snake Eyes. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We will talk to you next time. Bye.